Hi guys. Hello. Hello. My name is Barbara Ondrisek, and today I'm going to have a talk about my experience and best practices with Ionic. I've been working as a freelancer for more than 15 years now for different companies, mostly on Java web projects, mostly also in the backend, but I also like mobile development a lot, especially Android. Although I'm a Java developer, I was working lately for the Erste Bank on a new version of the net banking system George, and my group there was developing a sub-project in AngularJS. So I have a strong Java background. I love Java, but I always wanted to keep in touch with the front end, respectively with the front ends, since apps are also front ends of a service. My first commercial job was 2001 for Siemens, working on a prototype for a chat client running J2ME. Does anyone remember J2ME? Yeah, that was really tough there. And since this job in 2001, I fell in love with mobile development, although it was J2ME. And I was even more happy after Android came out to the market in 2008 because Android apps are developed in Java. So over time, I developed a couple of Android apps, some commercial as a freelancer and some just for fun. As I know now, it's called a pet project, like you have your own little project to take care of. And suddenly, one of my apps gained more attention than I expected, and that was the Like a Hipster app. The Like a Hipster app is a fun project I started with a friend and my cat, and it became true. She's quite busy at the moment because I created also a bot for it. So bots are the new hot shit. So, but I'm not talking about that part. Yeah, and this one project is Like a Hipster project. This is the icon for it. Got more attention than we expected. And due to, I programmed an Android app for it, and due to severe group pressure, and the success of the Android app, I had to think about developing an iOS version too. And I love to play around with new technology, so I thought, how hard can that possibly be to program an iOS version of that? So, yeah, famous last words in a way. So, what about all these other mobile operating systems? So, mobile development is always a fight, kitty fight. And because there's so many different operating systems and devices, and as you might also know, there is not only a war between the companies themselves, like Google with Android and iOS, Apple with iOS, but also between the customers, because usually people start to fight about their personal phone. So when you want to implement a mobile version of your service, you have to consider also to implement a super responsive mobile optimized website too, because everything is going into mobile. And or you have to choose which different native implementations for the various OSs you implement, and you end up like this with many different implementations of the same stuff, which is pretty hard to maintain. So you might develop the same feature then in 3 different teams also, the web team, the Android team, and the iOS team, maybe also a Windows team, BlackBerry, don't know. And then you have you end up with with a bunch of different code bases. So the cause for this island building is that most developers usually specialize on a certain language and a certain OS, and they're not really multilingual, let alone multi-OSC. So the solution is Ionic for the win. Who knows Ionic already? Oh, almost everyone. Who is using Ionic? 1? Okay, 4. Okay, great. Because it's a talk about a little bit more like an overview and not too much into into the depths of Ionic. So Ionic is beautiful. The market is as beautiful. I like that. Beautiful, free, open source front-end SDK for developing hybrid mobile apps with web technologies for the latest mobile devices. It utilizes the mobile-first approach and offers a library of mobile-optimized HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript components, gestures, and tools for building highly interactive native apps. And it uses a code base that is written in AngularJS. So I guess everyone knows AngularJS already, since it's on the market for like 3 years or more. And who is actually working with AngularJS? Yeah, me too. I just, for the people who don't know AngularJS as well, also, I just tell you that AngularJS is, they call it super heroic. I also like that description. JavaScript, model view, whatever framework, because it's not model view control, it's whatever. And because whatever. And it's a state-of-the-art JavaScript tool for rich and robust single-page web applications and offers a lot that JavaScript alone does not, namely structure. In common jQuery apps, the DOM often is represented by, the DOM often represents the model, and with Angular, the business logic is decoupled from DOM manipulation, which leads to minimal DOM manipulation, what is a good thing. Angular calls its principal model view whatever. So you have a single-page application that is divided into modules, and such as the login module, the main screen, the sub-screens and components, admin components, and so on. So simply speaking, Angular app is a collection of modules. And Angular also offers basic stuff such as data binding, scope separation, dependency injection, validators, filters, and Angular-specific stuff such as providers, directives, controllers, modules, factories, and services. So now we have this Angular. So you write for Ionic your code in Angular, but to make it a little bit more interesting, we can also add now some native stuff to access the native components of your phone. And this is accomplished with Cordova. Apache Cordova is a tool to access native device APIs and functions, and supports also offline scenarios. Most commonly known is Adobe PhoneGap as a distribution of Cordova. And there are many Cordova core plugins, such as accelerometer, like for the shaking gestures, or you can also with Cordova access the camera and connections, contacts, events, media notifications, geolocation, files, and so on. So everything a developer might need. And it's also cross-platform focused from the basis on. So by building just one AngularJS app with Cordova extensions, you can now deliver up to 8 different native mobile apps, namely Android, iOS, Windows, Windows Phone, BlackBerry, Ubuntu, Firefox OS, LG WebOS, and Amazon Fire OS. And last but not least, the browser version itself, which is pretty handy. And now you merge it all together, Angular and Cordova in Ionic, and despite the HTML5 functions, and the framework AngularJS and Cordova itself, which merge perfectly together, Ionic also offers a platform for integrating services such as push notifications and analytics, out-of-the-box SaaS support for this CSS stuff, and also great build tools. Ionic is actively developed and continued, and there's a huge community around it. You can also, when you have some problems, you can also look it up, Google it, and you find it on Sectrace. Yeah, it also has a View app to check quickly implementations, live reload support, and logging is integrated also during development. And what's really nice is you can really fast prototype with Ionic, because the motto is you develop it once and you deploy it then everywhere. With Ionic comes a powerful command line interface, including build tools. And you can, with one command line interface, you can create, build, test, deploy, and run your Ionic apps onto any platform you like. I'll just show you a small sample of it. So the first command is to install Ionic via npm, obviously. So this, and then you have just this Ionic command line interface where you can start a new app. That's the first one. I have here also my laser pointer. You can also creates a new app, and you have also some templates you can try. Then you just add a platform, iOS, Android, or whatever comes to your mind. Then you can build, emulate it, because it's also integrated with emulators. Works perfectly in. I tried Angular. I tried iOS and also Android emulators works fine. And then you can also run it, and also with a nice feature. The nice feature to run it, I wrote it here, is the live reload thing. That is pretty cool, because you can edit it, and I will show you later how to do that. You can edit your JavaScript files, and it's instantaneously uploaded to the emulator itself. So, when you want to add some Cordova plugins, you just add it. Like there's a huge library of Cordova plugins that are also actively developed. So for almost every problem, you find a Cordova plugin that helps you. This command is also very handy, because I don't know, does any one of you does iOS development? Okay, not so many, but for iOS development, I understand it totally that you don't like it that much. For iOS development, you have to create a bunch of different pictures for the different resolutions of the screens, and it's like really you have to, and it's generated with this Ionic resources task that you just generate 50 images, so small images and splash screens and so on. Run is also a very nice feature. I show you them later. And iOS, this is the Ionic Serve lab with this lab mode you have here. You can start this Ionic lab thing where you have directly next to each other the different versions of your app. Because Ionic uses a different CSS for iOS and for Android. And then you see, like for iOS, it's usually typical to have down here this menu, and for Android, it's typical to have it up there. There are also some other differences. So that's obviously like a hipster app. And you see also instantly the differences of the native implementations. And the result could look like that. That you have here, this is now a screenshot of the iOS version on the device itself. And this is the web version that also works perfectly nice. And it also scales, so it's a responsive site. It also scales to that. So you also, when you create a web version of it, you can just you can also deploy this into production. I just tell you something also about the best practices I personally have with this iOS and Ionic development. My personal best practices are use an IDE for developing, like WebStorm or whatever comes to your mind. I know there are many hardcore guys who just need a Vim and that's all they need, but Some tools like these JetBrains tools integrate debugging, highlighting, and so on, and also build tools. So they can be quite handy sometime. Also, I enjoyed very much having live reload in the browser. I think it's awesome that you change something and then it's instantly there. One other best practice I have for you is release early, release often, get and embrace your beta testers. They do help very much. Other lessons learned? I have here, first of all, iOS development sucks. It's really, I already wrote a rant about 12 things I hate about iOS development on my blog, Electropaper.de, or on Medium. So there is really, it comes from the most deep of my heart that I hate iOS development, really, very, very much. Because iOS development is, you feel like being squeezed into some super unintuitive and complicated structure, and I don't really like that. And another lessons learned is, although you program it for a multi-platform framework, not everything is working perfectly in the native app, so there's also some little differences, like when you develop a web app, it's like between the different browsers, also the differences that you have when you develop it on Firefox, and on Chrome it's a little bit different, or in Internet Explorer and so on. And one last lessons learned is Windows development, so mobile development from Windows sucks also. It's also super complicated because you also need this Visual Studio installed and all that crap. Okay.
Thank you for watching this talk. Down below you can find our channel ViennaJS, where you can find a lot of different videos about front-end and back-end JavaScript, and feel free to subscribe.